Hi everyone, and welcome to my review of Alfred Goulding's A Chump at Oxford in 1940. Of course, a Laurel and Hardy film. Now, this is, I've been meaning to review this, for quite a few weeks now actually. It's one of the first films I watched when I moved into this new house, and I just didn't get around to reviewing it. Yeah, I just thought, why not do it now after, I've got a bit of time tonight. And yes, Laurel and Hardy, this is my first review of these guys kind of films, and not a lot of people now kind of talk about these guys, and of course, Charlie Chaplin, I think, there's no comparison. Charlie Chaplin is the greatest, out of these classic kind of comedy, actors and of course directors and everything, and there was no comparison really. But I've not seen enough of Keaton's work to kind of judge that. Buster Keaton. I've only seen really a couple of shorts from him, and I really enjoyed quite a few of them. There's one of them I didn't like, the Pale Face, I think it was. But yes, I'm very impressive. All these guys are great, of course, and it's just a case of I happen to think Chaplin was the best, but Laurel and Hardy, I think, are the guys that really are the most underlooked. And even the people that do watch their films, they kind of just say that they're funny and stuff, but there's a lot of craft that goes into them. And it's kind of just genius comedy, I think. Some of their stuff is just Way Out West and Sons of the Desert, which is probably still their best feature film, and really anything they've done. Some of the stuff is just some of the best comedy stuff I've ever seen. The slapstick is just great, and the pairing, the chemistry and the pairing that these guys had, almost unmatched. I think probably the best comedy duo really in cinema, I would say. And I do think Chaplin's better, but he's of course as kind of a single act guy. But yes, A Chump at Oxford, kind of 1940, and it's one of their last Hal Roach produced films. In brackets, their best stuff really was mostly with him. There's some exceptions, but yeah, after a few years after this, they would start to go, unfortunately, into a lot of B films that weren't that great, and they kind of just became a parody of themselves. I've not really seen too much of them, the later works, but they unfortunately they did make some bad stuff, and that's a shame. But up until the 1940s, they were great. They were masters really. They made so many shorts. One of the best being The Music Box, and but they made some great feature films as well. And I think generally just great works of cinema. Classic films, classic shorts. I actually think, that their shorts are just as well some of the best comedy stuff I've seen. But yes, this is the one that I watched, a few weeks ago, and yeah, it's just a great one. It's one of their best actually. Chump Oxford. The plot really, without ruining too much, it's kind of about the execution really, and the slapstick though. After a few things that I won't be talking about the first bits, because that's kind of not the meat of the film. But shenanigans go on. They try and find odd jobs and stuff. Eventually, they come to a moment where they kind of think they want to get an education, and they kind of get advised by this guy to go to Oxford, in England, and they eventually do, and to kind of get an education and stuff, and then they when they arrive, they basically the rest of the film is them. Getting played pranks on by these guys, these students. And one of these students actually is played by Peter Cushing, so that was interesting. Very young in this film. And yes, it's just really the plot is never really too important with Laurel and Hardy films really. A lot of comedy films actually you don't really need. In that sense, a plot that blows your mind. But yes, I think this is one of their best. And I think as well the charm of this kind of Oxford sort of scenario and stuff is just great. And the way that the students are kind of the maze scenes are great. I think they're masterful. Really, just the way that kind of balance of comedy and sustained comedy. This is what a lot of Laurel and Hardy stuff is. It's not just some great comedy lines or scenes or stunts or something. It's just there's so many great sequences that are sustained, and there's a scene actually that goes on for quite a few minutes of just one of the guys kind of playing around, touching their shoulders and everything, and making them think that it's one of them touching it, you know, and kind of toying with them. But it just works so well, and it kind of just keeps up that comedy. And of course, Laurel and Hardy, you know, it's not it's not just about the comedy; it's about how likable these guys are on screen and stuff. And you know, just I watched these as a kid. Actually, you know, very very young age, I had the DVDs, of course, and we've got most of the collection actually, and you know their best stuff really. You know, a lot of their shorts and stuff. But yes, I've always loved these guys, and just you know, Hardy's kind of Hardy and Laurel, the dynamics is just classic. You know, just it couldn't be any better really, and you know, just the way they work together on screen. You know, they're great on their own. You know, and there's of course loads of times in the shorts and stuff where they're kind of in separate things, you know, scenes, but when they're on together, it just makes for absolutely classic cinema, really. And throughout this film, you know, they're just great. You know, as I said, this is one of their best probably feature films, and I just think it's quite flawless in the way it has this charm, you know, this kind of charm to it as well, with the students in Oxford and stuff, the banter and the you know, toying with them, and you know, the first half is great as well. Just great slapstick, you know, great, you know, James Finlayson as well. He was also always great in the Laurel and Hardy films that he was in. He's just a great actor. I loved him. You know, he was great. And you know, all the stuff early on is really really great. And just the narrative of this film is just really the way it unfolds, kind of ironically, and just plays out. And they end up in Oxford, and you know, even that can't go well. You know, right for them. They kind of just everything goes wrong. You know, they get lost in a maze and stuff, and then you know, things unfold. I won't ruin what happens at the end, but it's just a great film, I feel, and you know, it's quite short. You know, their feature films were never really long. You know, around the hour mark maximum, and yeah, it just you know, it's just a great film that works so well. I think it actually is a masterpiece. You know, I just think I couldn't really flaw it, and you've just got great the kind of action, you know, the slapstick and everything. It's just so well edited together. This film is really just so well directed, and you know, it's a kind of it's just yeah, just the way that it unfolds is just great. It's so compelling, hilarious film. You know, all the comedy is just genius, really, and you know, the performances, of course, as always, really, you know, by you know, Oliver Hardy, Stan Laurel, are just great. You know, these guys were so good. Genius comedy, you know, actors, and it's just really well. It's just suddenly directed, and you know, the script is just hilarious. But it's just kind of the slapstick that kind of is the genius stuff that elevates the film. And yeah, it's just, you know, it's not, you know, it's not like a Chaplin, you know, like City Lights, where it's gonna move you beyond, you know, or whatever. But it just, for what it is, you know, for what, you know, a comedy film, you know, and you know, it just I cannot flaw this film really, you know, and it really just is a warm film, as a lot of their films are, and it just kind of made my night, you know, to watch this film, and thoroughly enjoyable throughout the entire film, and I cannot really flaw it. And yes, you know, like a lot of Laurel and Hardy films, I do give high scores to them, you know, because I just think compared to pretty much every comedy act, you know, they are right up there at the top. I think, as I've said, you know, in terms of classic cinema, I think only Chaplin was better. You know, as comedy duo, they're just, you know, the best really for me that kind of I've ever seen. And really, every act of this film just builds perfectly, and you know, the way that dynamics play off each other, you know, and stuff, and just the sustained comedy that is tense and also funny, you know, and stuff, and the maze stuff is just so well put together, and just as well the way that these guys at Oxford are kind of against them and stuff and playing on them, it's just great, you know, it's constantly enjoyable throughout, you know, and it's so well crafted, so well put together, and if you've not seen it, definitely check it out, of course. Laurel and Hardy, you know, in general, I think they need to kind of they need to be seen more. I think a lot of people just don't. They just overlook them. I feel, you know, personally, I feel, and you know, you've got guys like Buster Keaton and Chaplin, you know, but there's also Laurel and Hardy. You know, some people forget them. I feel, and certainly they don't. I don't think a lot of people would see them as actually great kind of artists. They kind of just see them as funny, entertaining. But I do actually think that they were some of the genius kind of comedians ever, and I think I'd have to give the Chump at Oxford 100%. Actually, I think it is a masterpiece. Couldn't really floor it. It doesn't quite as well. Reach the heights of some of their absolute best feature films. One of them would be Sons of the Desert. And of course, their most famous film really as well is Way Out West. That was also stunning. But there's so many great shorts they made, and feature films, of course. And if you've not seen them, as I say, check them out, because you probably won't be disappointed. You probably just feel like, why are they not talked about more? Not taken as seriously. But yes, this probably marks quite a, the first in many, many reviews that I'll be doing of Laurel and Hardy. And I watched another short as well, which I might review as well around that time, a couple of weeks ago. But yes, thanks for watching my review, and I just think this is a stunning film, masterpiece really. One of Laurel and Hardy's better feature films actually. Just everything works, and it's just masterpiece really. Love it, absolutely adore a film, and as always, very, very charming, warm film that is just so entertaining, and it just unfolds at such a pace as well. And just throughout that hour, just sustains. It doesn't have a complex plot or a deep narrative, but it just sustains, and every kind of frame is just full of life, energy, and just comedy that just is so great. It's just stunning. It's always something to watch a Laurel and Hardy film. It's just it's very, very unique. It's just because of how good these guys are, and really beats any comedy really nowadays. I just think that classic comedy is definitely the best for me. Chaplin, Laurel and Hardy, and of course many other films by different directors and stuff. You've got some good comedies now, but if you compare if you compare classic with modern comedy, cinema in general, but comedy, especially now, there's not much kind of great comedies that come out now for me personally, and it's just it's great to just go back to this classic cinema, which I do much prefer classic cinema personally, and just watch these guys. It's wonderful, beautiful to see. Thanks for watching.